You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
I'm Chris Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the big show. We certainly appreciate you guys coming by. As always, the Chris Voss Show is a family that loves you but doesn't judge you. At least not as harshly as your mother-in-law. Because, you know, she liked the other guy better. But get her on your good sites. You ought to go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss. Chris Voss, one of the TikTok and all those crazy places on the internet. Today we have an amazing author. She's coming on the show to talk about her new novel that comes out June 25th, 2024. It's called Love Letters to a Serial Killer. I love this title.
Thank you.
There you go. Tasha Coryell is joining us on the show today. We'll be talking to her about the insights of her book and why you should pick it up now. Pre-order it, where it's available on fine bookstores everywhere. Tasha lives in St. Paul, Minnesota with her husband, toddler, and greyhound. She holds an MFA in creative writing and a PhD in composition and rhetoric from the University of Alabama. Her book of short stories, Hungry People, was published by Split Lip Press in 2018. Her debut novel, the one aforementioned, is forthcoming from Berkeley in June 2024, as we mentioned. Welcome to the show, Tasha. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for coming. It's wonderful to have you. Congratulations on the new book. Give us your .coms. Where do you want people to find you on the interwebs?
So you can find me. I'm very active on the website that used to be called Twitter. It's at Tasha with 7 A's at the end. You can just also search my name, Tasha Coryell. I have an Instagram that's at Tasha Coryell. And I'm trying to get more into TikTok, which is at Tasha Coryell Writer. But with the caveat that I'm getting better at it. So my videos might not be amazing yet. But someday they'll be amazing.
It's kind of a weird medium to go over there on the TikTok and be cool. It's kind of different.
Yeah, and I'm 36, so I've sort of aged out of the TikTok group where it feels really native to me. Twitter feels so organic to me when I'm using it, but then I go on TikTok and I'm like, what is happening here? It's
a weird format too. I'm 56 and I was popular on Twitter in the early days, and TikTok is just so hard to kind of get. I mean, it's changed a lot in format. Now it has long form. It didn't used to have long form, and so our stuff really didn't play well over there because, we talk to authors, we have long conversations. But now they have it up to, I think, 10 minutes or something like that, so it works a little better. So let's get into your book, the new book, Love Letters to a Serial Killer. Let's talk about it. Give us a 30,000 overview. What's inside?
Yeah, so Love Letters to a Serial Killer is about a millennial woman who's really dissatisfied with her job, her personal life, and so she gets really into true crime, specifically a case about a serial killer. And once he's arrested, she starts writing letters to him while he's waiting his trial, and she ends up falling in love with him.
Whoa! Hybristophilia, is that what they call this?
Yeah. I don't actually use that term in the book, but when I was first researching this phenomenon, I was like, oh my gosh, there's an actual word for it, for people who love killers.
Yeah, I think it comes to a nature of, it used to be that, if you lived in medieval times, men were killers because they were usually soldiers and fighting battles for kings and all that crap, and, they would prep for battle. So I think there's kind of a nature of what women look for in it. So there you go. So can you give us a little bit more on the plot without giving too much away? Does something happen? Because the byline is P.S. Please don't kill me.
So she falls in love with him. She ends up traveling to Georgia for his trial, and then he ends up getting acquitted.
Oh.
And she has to figure out whether or not he's guilty or innocent, and whether or not she wants him to be guilty or innocent.
Or maybe they should get married or something.
Yeah, he does propose to her. So I sort of feel like if you fall in love with someone who you know or is supposedly a killer, he's been accused of being a killer, there's a part of you that has to want them to be a killer, right? You don't just fall in love with an accused serial killer because he likes dogs or something.
Boy, this is a whole therapy session of a few years here, isn't it? How'd you come up with this plot? This isn't an experience from your dating life, was it? But pre-marriage?
No, I've been with my husband. We've been married for 7 years and together for 11 years. And he's like a very, very nice person. Definitely not like
a serial killer.
Yeah, I'm not in love with a serial killer or anything. What happened was that I was reading a lot of like older true crime. So there's Anne Rule's book about Ted Bundy, The Stranger Beside Me, where she worked at a suicide help call line with him. Mm-hmm. And then she continued to speak with him even as it sort of began unfolding that he was a serial killer. And then I read about Charles Manson and all these other serial killers, and sort of a uniting factor is there's always this horde of women that falls in love with someone who's accused of serial murder, which is such a strange phenomenon. And I was really interested in these women. And I think that the attention falls on the man more often than it falls on these women and why they do these things. And so I started playing around with the idea of what would happen if this did come to fruition. And what does that look like when it plays out? How do you initially fall in love, and what happens if he falls in love back?
That's wild. Yeah, this is a hell of a premise. So what are your thoughts on why women do this? Why do women fall in love with these serial killers? I'll see a thing where you're I think a lot of hybristophilia is where they're on death row. So they're not getting out anytime soon. It's not like you're just waiting for them to get out and we'll start a family when he gets out. Because, lethal injection is probably the only way he's getting out. And so you just kind of, you're a woman who could probably go in the world and meet a nice, good dude and get married and have kids, but you're chasing someone who's on a dead end death row. And what are your thoughts on that when you see that?
I think there are a couple of different factors that go into it. So to speak specifically to the death row part, there's this thing that I think about a lot, which is when I was 21, I was sitting in a coffee shop with a male friend of mine, and he thought that the barista at the coffee shop was really cute. Mm-hmm. And he was like, one of the things that I like about her is that I always know where she's going to be. I don't have to figure out where she's going to be. I know that she works at this coffee shop, so I can show up and she'll be there. And there's something nice about it. You don't have to search out the cute girl because she works at the coffee shop. And I think the thing about someone who's in prison, you don't have to worry about where are they? Can I track them on their phone? I know where they are. They're in death row. They don't have anything in their life for me. That person, you can be that person's link to the outside world. I think that for some people, there's security in that almost.
Yeah, you don't have to worry. They're not at the strip club or chasing chicks around town or doing any troublemaking. There's a lot of these. There's a lot of these couples now. They have location turned on, and I guess they're really big at tracking each other's location, which is, I don't know, weird for me. If you have to resort to that, then maybe you should seek couples therapy. But I've told my girlfriends for years, look, if I'm going to cheat, I'll leave you first and cheat, or that I'll just come home and be like, I've cheated. Bye. But yeah, it's really interesting, the psychology behind it. I find it fascinating, and I think there's guys that do it too. They write to women in prison.
Yeah, you're totally right. There's Gypsy Rose Blanchard, who's getting a lot of attention right now. Yeah, and so I think she had multiple boyfriends in prison. I haven't followed her that closely since she got out, but I know that she was married, and now she's divorced, and now she's with a different boyfriend that she, I think, was with while she was in prison. So I think she had multiple boyfriends while she was in prison. And, you know, I'm kind of I know enough about her story where I'm like kind of on her side. So, you know, good for Gypsy. But to go back to your question, I think that there's also, in terms of like why women specifically go after killers, I think this is like a greater phenomenon, like you were talking about before, where like in medieval times, right? Everyone was a soldier off to war. And so like everyone fell in love with someone who killed someone. I mentioned that I have a really nice husband. He's definitely never killed anybody or hurt anyone in his life. But like when I watch television, a lot of the fictional characters that I really gravitate towards, a lot of them are killers. And I still love them. And that feels like part of why I love them. Or even if they're not killers, they're definitely like bad people. Like I was obsessed with the entire cast of Succession, right? And all of them are bad people, but I still like that was part of the attraction for me. So I think that there is some sort of link where like we like bad people, right? It's just less palatable when it's like a literal serial killer versus someone who's killed a bunch of people in like a fantasy book or as part of war. Like, you know, it just depends on how you package it. But there is this attraction in other forms.
Is it the same as what I do? Years ago when I used to get depressed, I would watch Cops, the TV show Cops. And I would watch like about 2 hours of that. And then I wouldn't be depressed anymore because I would see so many other people who are so fucked up. And I'm like, you know what? My life is great. I don't have cops kicking in my door. I'm not sitting on the couch with a wife beater, picking a fight with cops, going to jail, getting clubbed or shot to death or whatever it's called, the taser thing. And I'm like, you know, after 2 hours of that, I'm like, you know what? Why am I feeling sorry for myself? I have a great freaking life compared to these people on TV. Is it like that, or isn't it? I don't know. I know women like to exercise their emotions, and so sometimes they like those highs and lows.
I know the phenomenon that you're talking about because I watch a lot of Bravo reality television shows, and those have that effect on me where I'm like, wow, like no matter what's going wrong in my life, like it's nothing compared to these people on this television show. But I think it's slightly different than that. I think it's like we find like people with dark pasts to be like really mysterious. And then we like sort of correlate that with a sexiness. And that's why we're attracted to them. And then I think sort of when you peel back the veil, if you actually date someone like that, it never goes well, right? You talk to people who are like, oh yeah, I like bad boys. And then you're like, how are your relationships going? And they're like, terrible. And it's, yeah, of course they're terrible. You like bad boys. But it's like that outside attraction is there.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy how people live their lives, and bad boys and prisoners, people on death row. It's crazy. So, Tasha, give us your final pitch out to people to order the book wherever fine books are sold, and your .com, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so my final pitch, I would say, is that this is a great beach read. I really wanted a book that people would want to read for fun or listen to for fun. I've heard really good things about the audiobook from people who prefer to read in that format. If you want to reach me, I am very active on Twitter or X, you know. And so my name on Twitter is @Tasha with 7 A's. You can also find me on Instagram. I am new to TikTok. I'm still trying to work that out. And I'm @Tasha Coryell on Instagram and @Tasha Coryell Writer on TikTok. So you can find me there. And my website is tashacoryell.com.
There you go. Well, it's been fun to have you on. Thank you very much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. There you go.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming. And thanks for tuning in to my audience. Pick up the book wherever fine books are sold. Love Letters to a Serial Killer. I love the concept of it. It's out June 25th, 2024. And thanks to everyone for being here. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss. Chris Voss is one of the TikTokity and all those crazy places on the internet. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe. And we'll see you guys next time.